The morning air is saturated with the sweetness of rot, a sour-sugared stink that clings to everything. It's the sort of scent that would make you retch if you were still properly alive. They're awake at last. That sharp breath of yours, half-wet gasp, half-gag, gives you away. Don't be ashamed. The living always need a moment to adjust to the climate of my home. Welcome to the Garden of Nurgle, little soul. Pay no mind to the muck or the flies. They belong here as surely as the rust-colored sky overhead. A lovely morning, really. The viscous fog hangs low in green-gold sheets over churning swamps, and the twisted trees sag beneath slime-soaked lichen, their limbs burdened with bulbous fruit that will burst with plague spores at a touch. Listen, the distant, cheerful babble of nurglings at play among the fetid pools. They giggle like children, splashing in brackish filth, and in its own particular way, it warms the heart. I draw a deep breath through many mouths and orifices. You'll grow accustomed to that and savor the taste on the air. Each inhale lacquers the lungs with familiar motes of pestilence and life. I sigh, content, pus threading from the cracks of my lips as a cloud of flies hums out with the exhale. Home, sweet home. You, on the other hand, are less enamored. Your eyes water while your hand rises to cover your nose. Easy now. Touch the face too roughly and the skin may slough off. Only half in jest. The sickness has been hard on your mortal shell. Look there on your forearm, the flesh turning a lovely green-black, the skin splitting around oozing boils. Perfectly ordinary for one of Grandfather Nurgle's gifts. Promising, even. It means he's noticed you. Rejoice. Many would kill, well, die for a blessing such as this. Yes, you're frightened, bewildered, perhaps horrified by the sight before you. Take a moment. Collect whatever wits fever hasn't clouded. I am real. And this is no mere nightmare. Well, not only a nightmare. My corpulent shadow over you, the toad-like grin on a pustule-riddled face, the flies circling my horns, the slime and bile squelching as I shift my bulk. Every bit of it is true enough. At least as truth works here in the warp. Allow an introduction, little one. I serve Grandfather Nurgle, what your Imperials coarsely call a Great Unclean One. Harsh title, that. I prefer doting uncle of disease or custodian of decay, but I wear Great Unclean One with pride. It does have a grand sound to it, don't you think? Great Unclean One. I am one of the favored children of Nurgle, Lord of Plagues, Fly Lord, Master of Pestilence and Decay. Through me and my kin, his will seeps across the cosmos. But here in this garden, we stand within the heart of his realm, and you, dear soul, already have one foot in it. Quite literally, your toes fade into the sludge beneath you. Don't panic. That's only your spirit drawing into the warp. Your body remains back in the materium, rotting wherever you fell. As that husk dies, your soul drifts nearer to Grandfather's embrace. You hover at the threshold. Fortunate for you, I'll be your guide. I'll be gentle, well, as gentle as claws like scythes allow. Walk with me. If walking's difficult with that necrotized leg, lean on a nurgling. See the eager little fellow at your feet? Round belly, scabby arms, bright bead eyes full of mischief. He's offering a hand. Slimy, yes, but well meant. A name? They don't keep them as mortals do. I call him whatever amuses me. Squishable, pustule pup, what have you? He doesn't mind. Bask in the attention, Tiny. He squeals when I pat his warty head, and a spurting of foul fluid jets from one of his many orifices. Adorable. He's one of many little helpers, born from the boils on my own skin. Yes, literally. Like a proud parent, I birthed them from sores and wounds. Each carries a spark of Nurgle's love, eager to share it with all. Rambunctious little things, underfoot, underhoof, undergut, but each is dear to me. In this garden, I play the caregiver. I nurture slimes, tend rotweeds, and stir cauldrons when Grandfather rests. It's a satisfying life, full of simple pleasures. Mind your step. There's a strip of writhing maggots across the path. Best not to squeeze those between your toes yet. That sensation takes some getting used to. I know it's much to absorb. Only hours ago, by mortal clocks, you moved through life convinced it was ordinary. Perhaps a cough, a lesion or two. You hoped for a common flu. No. Your cough was my first hello, and the fevered delirium was me whispering from the corners of your dreams. Those wilting gardens you glimpsed. Those plump, laughing figures beckoning you to release your fear, no mere hallucinations. Grandfather Nurgle called you home, and you answered, whether you understood it or not. Despair and disease opened the door and we walked in. Politely, mind you. I did knock, figuratively speaking. Few mortals welcome us with a smile. They pray for deliverance to that false emperor of yours or any god with ears, but rarely to Grandfather Nurgle until desperation strips them bare. Only when hope withers do most of you see the truth. There is kindness in decay, relief in surrender, and a warm, if slimy, embrace waiting beyond your pain. I can read the question in your eyes, or in the one that hasn't liquefied. Why me? What will become of me? The dread of a soul poised on the brink. Its taste is familiar. Yes, I taste emotion on the warp breeze. Fear goes sharp and acid. Acceptance turns rich and sweet. Keep those questions close. By the end of my tale, you may find your fear has changed into something else. What tale? The one that brought you here. The account of your last mortal days and the first steps of your new becoming. You felt it, didn't you? In those last fever-bright moments. Your body remade, your mind unspooling. Fever blurs the memory. Let me stitch the gaps. Sit by this great toadstool. Gently. It belches spores if jostled. There, as comfortable as fungus allows. Ah, human femur. Grandfather's gardening tastes run eclectic. I'll just shift that aside. Now a little refreshment. A bowl of broth. Mortals get hangry, half hunger, half ire, when their flesh begins to feed on itself. One moment. Stir, stir, bubble and blur, bring soup for our guest. The cauldron perks up at my call. A thick bubble vaults from its brim, sails through the rank air and settles into my outstretched palm, congealing into a bowl. Try a sip, no? The rot has your nose clogged. More for me. Corpse starch chowder with a note of mildew, an acquired delight, but among my favorites. Where to begin your story? With a little planet, a little city, and a little cough that unmade everything. Picture your world, the one you knew before it yielded to blessed ruin. A few weeks past, it was a planet like any other under the Imperium's stern eye, crowded with busy little humans, devoted to their routines and their god-emperor. You remember it, perhaps? Hive City spires scraping a polluted sky. Workers, nobles, soldiers jammed within metal walls, all oblivious to the doom creeping closer. Your city, its name escapes you? Fever steals such things. Vanis Prime, yes. Hive Vanis Prime on the planet Septivol. Aptly named for what followed, though mortals miss the irony. Septoval does sound like septic, doesn't it? It began quietly, one cough as promised. A single sick man in the lower manufactorum, a nobody. Dockhand, water hauler, what does it matter? He came home sweating, lungs tickled. By morning he burned with fever. His back erupted in pustules. The Medicare attendants blamed industrial exposure, poor fools with their tidy explanations. They ferried him to the infirmary, fed him corpse starch broth and recaf, and ordered rest. Patient zero, as you'd call him. I watched through the eyes of a particularly fat fly on the infirmary wall while his skin turned a deep plum under a sickly pallor, and vomit black as pitch dribbled from his lips. Within hours he shook and babbled, mad with pain and dread, and yet a kind of relief crept into his mumbling. The fly that was my eyes crawled closer, and I heard him whisper through cracked lips, "Emperor, save me, please." Faint, even then, as if some part of him knew no emperor would answer. By the time he expired, the plague had rooted. Every nurse, kin, and co-worker who drew near in those first days carried it away. A pat on the shoulder, a shared cup, a cough in a tight hab corridor. Trivial gestures turned into vectors. 2 days later, dozens lay abed with fever. In 500s. Wards overflowed. Officials still had no idea what they faced. They tried the usual, lower-level quarantines, notices to stay in habitation. Governors hate to dent productivity, but administratum clerks had to admit something was amiss. Rumor outran the sickness, murmurs of a new virus, of off-world contamination, and bolder whispers of something worse. Chaos, they muttered behind closed doors, as if the word itself could bite. A handful were ahead of the curve, the joyous few in on the secret. The cultists. Blessed brave souls laying the ground for my grand arrival. You didn't know a Nurgle cult nested in your city. Not until too late. They hid for years. A heretical healer here, a sanitation worker there, a clerk in the governor's administratum, quietly sowing grandfather's dogma. They ensured that once patient zero fell ill, the plague would run unchecked. A siphon on a water purification machine to let a touch of filth slide through. A bribe to a HAB supervisor to ignore the stench from the underdecks. When panic rose, they sabotaged every serious quarantine. One devotee, Emil, if memory serves, deliberately infected himself, stumbled into the central air recycling plant, and slashed open his own boils into the water supply. What a fountain he made. Blood and pus rode the city pipes, bearing Grandfather's benedictions to thousands at once. He died smiling, knowing he'd be reborn in our garden. Within a week, Vanis Prime drowned in plague. Entire hablocks fell silent but for wet coughing and the groans of the dying. The lower hive, where it started, became a charnel house. Enforcers sent to hold barricades found streets lined with collapsed figures, kneeling in supplication or curled in fetal despair, flesh sliding like wax from bone. Some of the dead didn't stay dead long, a little surprise of mine. A particularly vicious strain, part physical pox, part warp-born curse. They call it zombie plague, or curse of unbelief in certain dusty inquisitorial tomes. Those who died with no spark of hope or faith rose again, eyes filmed, minds empty, shoved along by my will and the disease's hunger. Imagine the shock when quarantine teams arrived and corpses reached to bite. The first squads that pushed into the hot zones, brave, armed, resolute, were soon swarmed by their former patients, jaws slack, hands grasping. Fresh plague zombies tore into the sound. Gunfire and screams rattled the tight underhive corridors. A few panicked survivors fled upward, sowing infection with every step. I do love symmetry. The healers who tried to cage the sickness became its couriers to new districts. Up in the spire, the high and mighty felt secure at first. Picture the governor at his grand table, receiving reports of unrest below with a dismissive wave. Just another riot, a localized ailment among the verminous poor. Perhaps he ordered a purge or two, assured the Inquisition liaison, if one graced the planet, that all was under control. He could not have been more wrong. By then, the warp itself was stirred by our presence. The astropaths may have tried to scream for help, but Grandfather had already netted the skies. No signal left that world. Isolated like a quarantined leper, it was left to fester and die alone. By day 10, the mid-hive buckled. Manufacturum laborers, overseers, even some of the governor's own household guard fell ill. Panic respects no gate. When the first vomit-slick victims stumbled into the grand central plaza, where the spire's elite strolled among imported trees, the illusion of safety shattered. One infected administratum scribe, his eyes bulging with fungus, suddenly burst, yes, literally, in the midst of off-duty officers. His body ruptured in a spray of filth and spores, showering screaming nobles in disease. Within hours, those officers were abed, and their families with them. Order collapsed. Whom to trust? Who carried the pox? Neighbors turned suspicious at the slightest cough. Some barricaded themselves in mansions with guards and air purifiers, useless against Grandfather's lovely spores. Others fled the hive entirely, packing the lifts and transit rails, guaranteeing the contagion reached every corner in their flight. I was fond of that sight. Terrified citizens crammed like sardines in a freight car, carrying blessed ruin wherever they went. Pressed cheek to neck, all of them breathed one another's infected air. Had I been able to dance a jig without flattening a block, I would have. Below, the true servants of Nurgle were reveling. As law and order unraveled, the cult stepped into the open, processing through corpse-strewn avenues, chanting hymns to decay and ringing rusted bells whose peals carried the warp's corrupting sway. They promised rescue to the hopeless, accept Nurgle's gifts and be released from fear. Many, abandoned by their emperor and with death at their door, did exactly that. They carved the three-ring fly of Nurgle into their flesh, pledged themselves to Grandfather, and in return found their pain dulled and their hearts filled with grotesque cheer. I watched women whirl on shattered legs, laughing as blisters flowered across their tongues. Men who had screamed a moment before stood serene, entrails uncoiling beneath their armor. Once they yielded, the agony ebbed, replaced by a perverse bliss. Such is the gentleness hidden in our afflictions. Surrender, and find peace in the inevitable. Not all were willing. Many clung to a dying creed, whispering to a far-off emperor. None were answered. No shining savior descended to mend them. At best, a handful of zealous clergy wafted incense and chanted litanies, as though perfumed smoke could halt Nurgle's rot. One particularly foolish confessor lifted an aquila above the sick and vowed the emperor's mercy if they held fast to faith. The crowd pleaded for deliverance until he began to cough between verses. The plague took him mid-prayer. He folded at the waist, flecking the faithful with blood. Some fled screaming, others only watched, hollow-eyed as their last bastion crumbled. I will admit I savored his end. As he spasmed upon the chapel steps, I spoke to him, not in flesh, but everywhere in spirit by then. "Where is your emperor now, little martyr? With all your faith, you die in filth like the rest." His eyes widened. Whether he truly heard or merely recognized futility, I cannot say. In his final wet rattle, I thought I saw a trace of acceptance, or perhaps only rot film crusting his gaze. Either way, his death marked the end of any meaningful resistance to the plague's advance. In 2 short weeks, Vanis Prime was remade. Boulevards that once thronged with life became sluices of decay, choked with bloated dead. Air once acrid with industry soured to a miasma of rot so dense the sun smoldered as a greenish disk. Silence settled, disturbed only by the drone of flies and the distant, delirious laughter of surviving cultists toasting amid the heaps. But the city's ordeal was not done, and my place in this performance had only just reached center stage. Until then, I'd worked as an unseen conductor, guiding the symphony of sickness from the immaterium, nudging pieces into place through my servants. The plague alone was beautiful, but Grandfather and I had more personal notice to bestow. The hour had arrived for a proper visitation, for Nurgle's true servants to claim this plague-swept prize. When the veil finally tore, I remember it well. The psychic reek of despair and mountains of ripened corpses had thinned reality's skin to paper. With a joyous shove, we broke through. Imagine the sight for any mortal left alive to see it. In the central plaza of Vis Prime, once a proud mart, now carpeted in rot, the air itself split with a thunderous rend. A wound of sickly green light opened, swirling wider like an infected gash. From it poured Grandfather's garden-made flesh. I came first. With a triumphant roar that rattled shattered windows for miles, I forced my vast bulk into the world. One heartbeat, the square held only flies and the whimpering of the dying. The next, I towered there. 3 stories, a mountain against the toxic sky, arms upraised in exultation. The ground quaked beneath my elephantine tread. Slime and bile poured from me in rivulets, each splash spawning life. Mushrooms sprouted where pus fell. Worms and centipedes writhed wherever my blood kissed stone. My laughter boomed, deep, gurgling delight. After so long bound to spirit, to feel bones crunch underfoot and taste fear in the material air again, it was sublime. Behind me streamed more of Nurgle's children. A pranking tide of Nurglings tumbled out, carpeting the plaza like gleeful vermin. They bounced on fat haunches, toppled barrels, smeared gore over everything, and played toss with severed heads the dying had left behind. Then came the plague bearers, our tireless tallmen, tall, attenuated figures with cadaverous frames and a single burning eye, each hefting a rusted blade and scroll and quill. They marched in ordered files, droning together. Listen, you can almost recall the cadence. 7 by 7, the tally begins. In that dry monotone, they counted every corpse and infection. Scrupulous stewards of Grandfather's largesse. Several bloated beasts of Nurgle followed, gargantuan slug creatures with trailing tentacles and yawning maws, overgrown pestilent pups eager to smother any with sticky affection. One barreled past me, squealing as it bounded after a fleeing plague victim like a dog after a toy. The poor man's legs failed quickly. The beast pounced, rolled, and ooze crushed him to paste. When it lifted off, he was only a red-green smear. Puzzled, it nudged the mash, unable to grasp death as more than an end to play. I gave it an encouraging pat, well, more like an entire head's worth, and it slithered on in search of new friends, drawing a glistening slug trail behind. Nor was the pageantry confined to the ground. Overhead, the roiling clouds split to reveal silhouettes descending, a scatter of rusted dropcraft and spearing bolts of teleport light. The Death Guard had come to harvest the fruits. Through the smog, I glimpsed corpulent figures in ancient power armor trudging from their landers. Once proud ceramite, now corroded and foul, hung with swaying censers that belched plague smoke and tipped with spiked icons of Nurgle. These traitor Aris, mortals elevated by Grandfather's favor, waded through sludge and corpses with a slow, unstoppable gait. One squad of plague marines strode from a cloud of spores at the plaza's rim, bolters ready. I knew their leader by the fly-eaten banner fraying on his pack and the ornate plague knife in his fist, a champion of Nurgle, distended with disease and pride. His voice rattled through a vox grill clogged with phlegm as he surveyed the field. "Our work has borne ripe fruit, brothers," he rasped, laughter bubbling beneath. "This world is truly blessed by Grandfather." They advanced to link with my demons, picking off stray movement with casual shots. A delirious woman, half her face gone to rot, staggered toward them, perhaps seeking aid. The champion simply lifted his bolt pistol and pulped her without breaking stride. Her body popped like an overripe grape, lacing the wall in ichor. "Amen," he spat, almost pious, as if conferring benediction by obliteration. I lumbered to meet them, my tread shuddering the stones. They halted, gazes climbing and climbing. Even those hardened post-human killers paused, awed for a breath by my girth and presence. To their credit, they did not blanch. I suspect grins hid behind cracked helms. One Marine, bareheaded, his face cratered with oozing sores, dipped a respectful nod. "Father Nurgle be praised," he wheezed. "The Great One walks among us." I answered with a wide bow, my gut nearly scraping the ground as I chuckled. "Rise, my brothers in rot," I boomed, my voice like bubbling tar. "Grandfather is pleased with your labor." And he was. Through the empathic link, I felt Nurgle's delight spread like comforting fever. The Death Guard had sown the seeds. Perhaps it was their vector that first slithered the plague into the hive via tainted cargo or a rite in the deeps. And I, as his demon, had come to reap. Together we would secure this world as another garden to the plague god. Their fists thudded to breastplates in salute, corrupted metal clanging. Formalities complete, we turned to the final task, snuffing the last resistance in the upper city. The cult and the pox had dispatched most of the populace, but my senses pricked at sparking life here and there, particularly a bright knot of frantic souls barricaded behind the heavy gates of the governor's palace. Ah yes, the governor. Against odds, a handful of him and his retinue survived behind honeycombed ceramite and purity seals. They'd sealed the palace early, shooting any who approached, sick or not. Now it was likely the last holdout of untainted humans in the hive. They must have watched in dread as my host spilled into the plaza. As we neared the towering gates, fire raked down from the murder slits. Last bursts and solid rounds pattered across my hide, most flattening on pustular flesh or sinking into rolls of fat to little effect. A few shots pinged from Death Guard plates, scraping away some grime, only modestly improving appearances. From above, a desperate voice rang out, "Foul daemon, we serve the Emperor. You shall not have this sanctum." I squinted up to find a man in ornate dress leaning from a balcony. Governor Brestenton Orund in gilded carapace armor, his face a rictus of fear and fury. To his credit, still at his post and not under the bed. Beside him, a robed figure brandished a staff topped with a silver aquila. Aha, an inquisitor. Even from the ground I could smell the fervor and psychic tang rising off him. "Defiant worms!" the Death Guard champion growled as a stubber round sparked from his pauldron. He gestured. "Bring down those parapets. Leave none." The plague marines advanced through the feeble hail and set to work with methodical grace. Grenades arced lazily and burst on balconies, swaddling defenders in corrosive mists. A heavy bolter hammered, disease-laden shells ripping masonry and men alike. One brave guardsman leaned out with a missile. A bolter round found him first and he became red fog. While my mortal allies worried the walls, I planned something grander. The palace gates, twin adamantine doors embossed with the imperial aquila, were sealed since the first alarms. Perhaps they imagined them beyond reach. I resolved to correct them. With a jovial roar, knock, knock, I waddled into a run and hurled my heft against the doors. Glorious! The left leaf tore free and sailed inward across the court. The right buckled like tin. I thundered through, grinding twisted metal underfoot, and entered the inner sanctum. Within, among manicured gardens already wilting in the tainted air, a final stand had formed. 24 survivors, perhaps. Palace guards in polished plate. A few PDF troopers who'd made it in, household staff clutching improvised weapons, and at their core the stern inquisitor I'd spied. Gaunt, with bionic eyes, purity seals bristling from his coat, the sigils of the Ordo Cephalorum on his shoulder. A plague hunter. Poetic that duty had led him into Grandfather's arms. For a heartbeat they froze as I bulldozed into their refuge, a nightmare sprung to size, my bulk filling their world, gut and sores on parade, nurglings spilling around my feet to caper in every corner. The governor, up close, went chalk white and staggered, nearly swooning from the stench rolling off me. The Inquisitor moved first. "All units, engage!" he barked, vox loud. "Purge the abomination for the Emperor!" To their credit or desperation, they obeyed. Gunfire snapped. A frag grenade bounced from my belly. I caught it and popped it into my mouth like a tidbit. Hums of shrapnel and las left black char on my hide. A few sizzled deep enough to draw a hiss. One clever trooper fired a melta, carving a molten crater in my flank that bled luminous pus. I howled, part pain, mostly joy. It had been ages since I felt such a crisp sting. It only roused me. "Yes, little flies, fight!" I bellowed. "Let's make it interesting." Around me, my host poured in. Nurglings by the dozen swarmed the breach, leaping onto shocked guardsmen and nipping with needle teeth. Plague bearers trudged forward, swinging plague swords with grim patience. A captain skewered a Nurgling, only to have two more scuttle up his back and gnaw his neck. He shrieked, flailed, and collapsed in a bubbling wheeze. The Death Guard and cultists surged to finish the rest. I barely noticed. Rage had me. A red, perhaps green haze filmed my sight. I remember rending into a knot of guardsmen with bare hands, tearing one in halves and whipping his torso like a flail to scatter the others. My Nurglings, feeling my mood, went feral, cackling as they worried any still moving. I reminded a few not to kill them all. Grandfather desired living infected to savor, but wrath had me, and gentler instincts waned. At the center, the Inquisitor raised a right. The butt of his staff struck stone, and a nauseating sanctity swept the court, like an icy blast through a steaming fen. He chanted High Gothic, invoking the Emperor's light and bracing the survivors with faith. I saw a plague bearer stagger, smoke threading from the sigils carved in its rot as the hymn touched it. A Death Guard Marine snarled as ancient wounds flared with pain beneath the holy syllables. A harsh prickling crawled across my hide, as if 1,000,000 of my cherished flies were crushed in the same instant. "That," I growled, "is the Emperor's hypocritical pressure, biting like frost." "Silence that corpse worshipper," I gurgled, humor draining away. I lunged, swinging a colossal arm in a broad arc and swatting a knot of guards aside like rags, my gaze locked on the Inquisitor. He met my stare without flinching, hoisting a small radiant skull relic that scorched my vision like staring into the sun. "Back to the pit, demon," he cried. "In the Emperor's name, I cast you out." For the first time in that entire campaign, true pain lanced me, spiritual, searing. The relic's golden blaze scalded my very essence. I recoiled, throwing an arm up to shield my face, and a torn roar ripped out of me, a sound I had not made in centuries. Fear. Yes, I admit it. A tremor of fear shook my being as the Emperor's power, channeled through that hallowed bauble, tugged to rip me from the mortal realm. I felt the sick pull toward the warp as sanctity tried to sever my moorings to real space. Around me, lesser demons shrieked and dissolved into foul vapor, banished by that light. Several Nurglings burst like overfilled blisters, squealing as they winked away. I staggered, my mass suddenly unsteady, my edges melting against reality. Unreality flickered along my limbs, one arm phasing between meat and ectoplasm. Rage and panic boiled up. No, this would not stand. The Inquisitor pressed his advantage, stepping forward with bold, quickened chant. The survivors rallied to him, hope kindling in their eyes. Imagine that, wretches daring to believe they might unseat us. I will not forget his face, stern, exultant, convinced he would banish a great unclean one with faith and a trinket. For a heartbeat, Even I wondered if this was my end, unmade by a fanatic's prayer. But Grandfather Nurgle tests us, that we might grow. In crisis, desperation and fury sharpened to a single base answer. Through the blaze of pain, I chose the simplest act. I spat. Mustering the strength left in my wavering form, I dredged up the most caustic clot of phlegm and bile from my depths and spat it at the Inquisitor. The glob struck his chest full on. To his credit, he did not fall at once, but the chant shattered as he gasped at the burn. My bile hissed through inquisitorial robes and into flesh. A steam, curled up where it struck, as though my vomit seared the purity off his soul. He reeled, the relic dipping as he clawed at his breast. That heartbeat was enough. A trio of Nurglings, brave little avengers, sprang onto his back with feral zeal. They tore and bit, one jamming its grubby paw into his screaming mouth. He thrashed, trying to dislodge them, and dropped the glowing relic. It winked out where it fell. Freed of its grip, my full strength flooded back like a breaking wave. Enough, I thundered. Surging forward, I raised my great plague sword. I mentioned my sword, a vast cleaver, rust-gnawed and venom-weeping, yet wickedly sharp where it mattered, and I brought it down. The stroke carved through Inquisitor and Nurglings alike in one ruinous blow, the blade smashing flagstones and cracking the tiled court. A geyser of gore and filth erupted where they had stood. Limbs flew, bodies pulped. His last word drowned in a gurgle as he split nearly in two. For a single stunned beat, silence held. The survivors gaped at the red-spattered remains of their would-be savior. Whatever spark had lit them, guttered at once. A few broke entirely, screams, sobs, knees hitting stone. The governor, cowering, behind a toppled statue, loosed a moan so pitiable I almost pitied him. Almost. Rage and exhilaration wrestled in me. I had come so near, perilously near to banishment. The Emperor's caustic touch still prickled along my essence. Fury took me. "You dare?" I snarled, my voice bubbling with wrath. "You dare wield his light against me? I am decay. I am inevitable. You cannot halt rot." Each phrase swelled to a bellow. I drew a cavernous breath, distending an already vast belly, and vomited forth a torrent. The sluice of chunky, virulent filth sheeted across the courtyard, drowning the remaining defenders. They shrieked as plague-ridden bile coated them, eating through faces, finding seams in armor, settling into every crease. Those not melted outright dropped weapons and clawed at their own skin while my fluids did their work. Death Guard and cultists surged in to finish what remained. I scarcely noticed. A haze, red or perhaps green, curtained my sight. I recall tearing two guardsmen apart with bare hands, ripping one man's arms free and using them to bludgeon another to paste. My Nurglings, tuned to my temper, went savage, snarling as they dragged down any still flailing. I barked at a few not to slay them all. Grandfather desired some left to spread tale or plague. But restraint, for me as well, had fled. In short order, the governor's palace sank into a charnel pit. I found the governor slumped by a fountain, eyes wide, babbling nonsense, mind broken. By some luck, he was untouched. Perhaps a stray slab had shielded him from my spew. Two cultists hauled him forward to present to me. I almost admired his cowardly fortune. I bent close to the quivering man. "So, Lord Governor," I hissed, ropes of drool penduluming from my mouth, "how does it feel to watch your empire of lies rot and fall?" He only mewled, gaze unfixed. No sport in tormenting that. With a shrug, I ended it, closing my fist around his head and pressing until it popped like soft fruit. Swift, merciful. See, we can be merciful in our fashion. And then it was done. The last guns fell silent. No human voices remained beyond the groans of a few mortally infected, lingering on the cusp. We had done it. Vanis Prime was ours, a garden of death and rebirth for Nurgle. A cheer, wet, gurgling, rose from what remained of my host. Plague-bearers lifted tally scrolls in salute. Nurglings danced in fountains of sludge. Deathguard warriors dipped helms in grim satisfaction. In the far hum of the warp, I felt laughter and pride echo. Grandfather Nurgle's jovial approval. The air shimmered with warp energy as reality resettled. In that haze, I fancied I saw him, Nurgle himself, peering through the veil, an immense shadow stirring a cosmic cauldron, delighting in his children's triumph. And beside him, within a cage of twisted boughs, a feminine outline, Aisha, the goddess prisoner, weeping for the fallen. One crystalline tear slipped into Nurgle's brew, and the cauldron hissed and bubbled anew with fresh concoctions. Another world fallen to the plague god, another turn in the endless cycle of life and death. We set to consolidating the victory. The Death Guard spread out to seize control, raising foul icons and summoning pits at the city's key nodes to anchor the warp's sway. They would remain to. Ensure this world stayed a haven for Nurgle's domain and could not be easily reclaimed. I busied myself extending the garden's touch, quite literally planting decay. With broad gestures, I coaxed mold and creepers from the palace remains. Sickly green vines, their tips swollen with dripping venom pods, climbed the marble pillars. Flowers of rot, hideous and beautiful, opened across heaps of offal. The Garden of Nurgle pressed into real space, reshaping the hive into a small echo of Grandfather's realm. Even the weather began to turn. The pall of clouds above churned toward a permanent drizzle, filth rain to soak the soil, ensuring nothing wholesome would root again, only the profane flora of chaos. Within days, whatever life still flickered across the globe winked out. The outlying settlements and far colonies succumbed without us needing to pay them more than a passing thought. Nurgle's plagues rode the winds and nested in vermin bellies until they found every last holdout. All of Septivol became a single vast charnel house, quiet, swollen, and ready for Grandfather's further cultivation. Amid that hush, I finally noticed you. Yes, you? Do you remember the moment? Likely not. You were barely conscious. I recall it perfectly. After the battle, once rage cooled and jubilation took its place, I found you in the palace courtyard, slumped against a toppled statue, a young soldier with sunken eyes, armor split, alive by the faintest thread. I lumbered closer. You were propped at the base of some long-forgotten imperial hero. Your last weapon slid from your fingers. Below the knee, one leg was gone. There it lay a few meters off, gnawed from the stump by a beast of Nurgle, perhaps. Your blood had pooled around you, oddly mingled with the sticky sheen of my bile. You must have been brushed by the edge of my spew, a blessed baptism of infection. When I peered down, you lifted your head a fraction. Emperor bless you. There was still enough left in you to glare up with either defiance or delirium. Your lips moved, one word, I think. Monster? Emperor? Or only a wet croak? I prefer to imagine a curse. It's more theatrical. And yet, in that instant, I felt something like admiration. Here was a mortal who had watched everything they believed in rot to sludge, whose body was ruined and riddled with my gifts, but in whose eye a stubborn spark still gleamed. Deliciously obstinate, perfect. I bent and, surprisingly gentle, scooped you into one vast hand. You weighed nothing to me, a rag doll slick with blood and disease. You thrashed weakly, and I hushed you like a parent stilling a fretful child. Hush now, I cooed through the rasp. Your fight is done, little one. You've been so brave. Around us, my followers watched with curiosity. A Death Guard Marine stomped over, perhaps assuming I meant to end you. Shall I execute this one for you, Great One? He rasped. I snarled, a sudden protectiveness in my tone. No, this one is special. He tilted his helmeted head, confused, but did not argue. He turned back to his duties and left us. You were special. I knew it then, perhaps intuition, perhaps a whisper from Grandfather. I sensed you were destined for more than an ordinary death. I cradled your broken body. The battle fog had gone, and I was jovial again. You'll be coming with me, I chuckled, though your fever-bright eyes were already rolling back. A moment later, consciousness slipped away entirely. Your body finally quit in my grasp. Perfect. It spared me the waiting. I could feel your soul loosening from that ruined flesh, drawn like a moth to warp light. "There you are," I murmured as you died. Your body went slack, a corpse at last, but I did not drop it. Right before me, a faint shimmer, your departing spirit, shapeless but present. With a pleased gargle, I snapped my free hand's fingers, opening a small portal, a personal path back to the garden. Caught in Nurgle's pull, your spirit drifted willingly into my domain. Like a kindly reaper, I ferried you home. And so here we are, full circle. Now you see how you ended curled in this pleasant corner of the garden, listening to my tale. I can see recognition flicker in your remaining eye. Yes, your last stand, your futile heroics, your death, and your rebirth. The truth settles in nicely, like a warm fungal growth spreading through your thoughts. After I brought your soul across, it needed time to take on shape. I carried you like a precious spore, tucked you into a comfortable puddle beneath the boughs of a suppurating tree, and let Grandfather's blessings work. You germinated beautifully. Look at you now. I remember my own spawning, popped from Grandfather's cauldron as a wee Nurgling, and look at me today. We each have our path. Go on, examine yourself. Stretch your arms. Ah yes, only one now, no matter. See how the flesh gleams with mossy corruption, knitting even as you watch. Tough, leathery, and tinged a lovely swamp green. That's your new hide, a clear improvement over the fragile pink you wore before. Your stomach hangs open a bit already. Your innards slosh at their own whim. But notice there's no pain. It feels right, doesn't it? Like loosening a belt after a hearty meal. Relief. Lean over this puddle. Murky, but clear enough for a reflection. There, do you recognize that face? The straggly hair is gone. The gaunt, drawn sickliness traded for a sturdier, if decayed, robustness. And that eye, bright and bulbous, glowing from within with Nurgle's power. Granted, it's the only eye now set neatly in the middle of your face. Plague-bearers rarely need depth perception, trust me. And from your brow curves a fine horn. Magnificent. It marks you forever as a blessed servant of Nurgle. I hear the faint rasp in your throat that would once have been a gasp. Shock and awe both. It's all right. The shift from mortal to demon can overwhelm. Some speak of a haze, euphoria and clarity at once. Your human memories may blur, as if they belonged to someone else long ago. Your new life hums at the back of your mind. The call to purpose, the urge to count and catalog, to share the gifts you've received. That itch you feel? That's the Taliban's instinct. You'll be keeping ledgers of disease soon. Perhaps not glamorous, but honored among our kind. How do you feel, little one? No pain, I'd wager. The wounds that slew you are irrelevant now. See, even the missing leg, those wriggling tubers of flesh are sealing the stump already. If Grandfather wills it, you may regrow it. Maybe as a tentacle, maybe a bone peg. Wouldn't that be grand? More importantly, is the fear still there? I suspect not. Fear of death, the unknown, pain, loss, all gone, evaporated like morning dew beneath a bile sun. In its place, that curious calm, serenity in accepting that you belong to something greater, decayed and everlasting. That is Nurgle's peace, the gift you resisted so long, now yours without end. Look, there's a Nurgling peeking from behind a mushroom cap, head cocked in curiosity. Shall we make introductions? Go on, I urge him. The tiny demon scampers forward and hops into your lap, or rather, onto your partially decomposed thigh. You stare, perhaps bracing for revulsion, but it never comes. His slime and giggles do not disgust you. If not a smile, your new face isn't designed for that, then at least a sense of kinship stirs. He nuzzles your belly wound affectionately. Congratulations, you've made a friend, the first of many. And look there, just above your crown. An ethereal parchment is already drifting into place, a tally list unfurling with lines of luminous script. The Plague-Bearer's sacred charge has found you. Every soul taken by the plagues you helped to spread, recorded in careful order. The figures arrange themselves neatly in sevens. 7 is Grandfather's number, and you are already working in blessed pattern. A purposeful eternity of arithmetic awaits, and once the rhythm settles in, it is said to be deeply satisfying. You won't lack mentors either. Footsteps squelch behind us as one of my lieutenants shuffles near. An older plague-bearer with an especially grand horn and cracked spectacles for deciphering the fine print of interminable disease names. He clears a phlegm-clogged throat. and in his dry drone welcomes you to the task. He presses a rusted quill, dripping with ink, or perhaps congealed blood, into your hand, and in the other a scroll blooms, veiled in foul sigils whose meanings you somehow already know, the current census of poxes. Without thinking, you rasp out a reply, a wet guttural assent in Nurgle's dark tongue. A moment ago you could not form a word. Now you're promising to catalog every plague of the Septival Hive in excruciating detail. I'm unreasonably proud. Satisfied, the lieutenant turns to waddle back toward his counting house, leaving a thin trail of maggots that immediately burrow into the garden loam. You look up for guidance, reassurance, and you have it. You've done well, my child. I attempt a comforting grin. With half my face sliding loose, it may present rather fiercely. My apologies. This is your new life. No suffering without purpose. No fear of the unknown. Everything decays, and we shepherd that certainty. We are the cure for the lie of immortality. In our embrace, all living things discover meaning. A fat corpse blue fly settles on your shoulder. Another perches on your horn. You don't mind in the least. They are kin now. Far off, a great bell tolls, and Grandfather Nurgle's laughter rolls like thunder. Perhaps he has noticed you, a new entry in his host. Perhaps that bell marks your birth into his service. I set one heavy, careful hand upon your hunched shoulder and bid you rise. Come, little one. There is much to do and eternity to do it. You heft the tally scroll and quill with a budding eagerness that is music to my senses. Where once you shook with terror, you now hum with purpose. We set off, and I hum a lilting plague hymn. A gaggle of Nurglings patter after us like ducklings. You hobble in time at my side, your solitary eye drinking in the grotesque wonder with something like contentment. The odor is almost quaint once ignored, and soon you will scarcely notice it at all. The path breaks open onto a vista of Nurgle's realm in its full, ungainly splendor. Endless swamp gardens rolling to the horizon, rot and life braided together. Forests of skeletal trees bow beneath shields of glowing fungi. A great bog bubbles with foams of many colors, where a gigantic demon slug wallows contentedly, shedding slime that will one day irrigate withered fields. In the middle distance, a rusted brass watchtower exhales thick clouds of spores into a sickly yellow sky. Along a ridge, a procession of plague bearers trudges by, their droning work song oddly merry as they ink fresh plagues into ledgers. Overhead, flocks of rotflies buzz, carrying pollen from corpse garden to corpse garden, sowing new life in death. Vast, alive, forever changing in its decay, this realm now includes you, forever. Before we drift back into the oozing undergrowth, I study you once more. Not so terrible, is it? You answer with a low, echoing grumble I choose to take as agreement, perhaps even a chuckle. Your new voice is hard to read, but your spirit is easy. It is at peace. Welcome home. Grandfather Nurgle has been waiting. Do not trouble yourself over the world you left. It lies still and silent now, forever in Grandfather's embrace. The Imperium will remember it, if at all, as a blighted loss. Here, though, that world has blossomed anew, a little shard of our paradise, rooted in real space. There is much for us to do. Tomorrow, perhaps, I'll show you how to stir one of Grandfather's cauldrons. With luck, he'll let us brew a fresh pox. It's a favorite morning chore, and you'll grow to love it. Do well, and who can say? Promotion comes to the diligent, an extra head, a herald's horn. The possibilities are endless and endlessly grotesque. Those lessons can wait. For now, our work calls. So many delightful things to count, and unnumbered worlds still craving a measure of corruption. The cycle continues, life, death, life again, and we, with a jaunty tune and a spring, or rather a squelch in our step, will see to it that all ends in rot and is reborn through it. Come along then, our eternal labor begins.